Greetings, Bill Hansen here, catering in Miami for 40 years and across the country for another 15. I've catered over 10,000 weddings in my lifetime. And by the way, I've been happily married for 37 years now and counting, and I'm not planning my own wedding. So if you're planning your wedding, based upon my experience, these are some of the tough must ask questions for your caterer. It'll do a couple of things: assure you that it's going to be a great event and your guests will be delighted. And also it will let your caterer know that you know what you're talking about. So here goes. There's quite a few. So first question is, how can I be assured that your price includes everything and that there will be no last minute surprises at the end of the event? Unexpected charges can totally ruin a wedding. And I think many people you've probably bought other services where you think it's going to cost you X and then it costs you X times 2. So be careful of that. A lot of caterers will quote you for the food, but then they won't quote you for the tables, chairs, linen, china, flatware, glassware. They won't quote you for the service staff, for the culinary staff. So be careful of that. The other thing I would do is I would ask to go and see in person one of the caterers' events and stay behind the scenes in the kitchen and taste a few of the food items as they go out. So many times a caterer can put on a great food tasting where they're cooking for 2 or 3 or 4, but when it comes to cooking for 200, it's a whole other story. Plus the fact, if you're there and you see how they operate, you'll get a sense of, do they have their act together or not? Some caterers won't allow you to do that, but if you were to ask me that, I would say yes. Next thing is, will you guarantee me, Mr. Caterer, Ms. Caterer, that there'll be no lines at the buffets and at the bars? That is important, and that there'll be no lines at the valet. Shouldn't have to wait more than 5-10 minutes to have their car parked. And then the passed hors d'oeuvres. You've probably been to events where the hors d'oeuvres are passed, but you happen to be on the periphery of the party, and throughout the 1-hour cocktail party, you see no hors d'oeuvres come your way, while the twofers by the kitchen, I like to call them twofers because they'll stand right by the kitchen where the servers come out and they'll grab the hors d'oeuvres before the rest of the guests get to taste them. So we have ways in our company to deal with that, different routes, different areas, and things like that. The next thing is, if you've ever been at a seated serve meal and you finished your salad and there's that interminable wait for the main course. And I guarantee you, each one of you has waited probably as long as 30, 40, 50 minutes. I know I have at other catered events. Here's a rule of thumb. The caterer should be able to dish up your hot food in no more than 15 minutes, okay? No more than 15 minutes from the first plate to the last plate. Next question is, tell me about your staff, Mr. Caterer, Ms. Caterer. Do you train your own staff or do you use an outside staffing agency? I've found over the years, caterers who have their own staff that know their systems, know their procedures, are much more likely to deliver better service than those caterers who 80% or 90% of their service staff are from staffing agencies. They generally don't know as much as the regular servers for a catering company. What's the ratio of servers per guest? What's the ratio of bartenders per guest? My rule of thumb is 1 bartender for every 50, particularly at the beginning of the event, and at least 1 server for every 10, plus a couple of extra to oversee and to help out. Ask them too about the bread service. one of the problems that I see at many catered events is that they put the bread out once, the bread's gone, the bread basket sits empty, or the bread and butter plate sits empty, and you want more bread or you want more butter. It's very important that they can tell you how they replenish the bread and butter. And for that matter, the wine and the water. I can tell you a story many years ago. I catered a very high-end wedding for the owner of Fisher Island. His name is John Melk, and he bought some very expensive wines. He had Dom Perignon, he had fine Bordeaux, he had fine white Burgundy. And I was still kind of getting my feet wet in catering. And afterwards, I asked him how he thought everything was. And he said, everything was great, Bill, except I really thought your wine service was slow. So, but kaboom, I learned my lesson there. And now on my team, I have assigned people whose only job is to refill the water glass, refill the wine glass, and to replenish the bread. Next question is, you want to meet your event manager and your event staff, chef, before the wedding. You want to know who you're going to be dealing with. Typically, you're going to deal with a salesperson up to that point. But in most catering firms, the salesperson's job is to sell the event and help you create the event. And they'll generally come to the event and show up, but they generally are not the ones who will stay throughout the event, making sure everyone is served. Another tricky thing is what type of sparkling wine, what type of champagne, and what will you be serving on the bar. People these days are very particular, and nailing it down in advance will avoid you having issues the night of the event when grandpa wants Grey Goose and all you have is Absolute on the bar. The other question is, will caterers allow you to bring in your own wine, your own liquor? My answer to that is yes, of course. I'm going to charge you on the wine a corkage fee because I have to serve it at the table. But if you want to bring in your own tequila or your own this and that, I'm more than happy to let you do it with no extra charge. Next question, Mr. Caterer, Ms. Caterer. How are you going to handle the onslaught of guests once the ceremony is over? That's assuming if it's at the same spot as the reception. And suddenly there are 100, 150, 200 people that are going to flood the bar. How are you going to deal with that? One way to deal with that is to have something passed immediately upon conclusion of the ceremony. It could be something as simple as wine, champagne, or even pre-poured beer. That'll take the pressure off the bar. The same holds true if all your guests are arriving from the church or synagogue by bus. Having a passed beverage there really will take the heat off your bar and put smiles so wide they could eat a banana sideways on your guests. Last question is for your catering people. What vendors do you recommend? We know who the good vendors are. We know the good florists. We know the good DJs. We know the good bands. We've been doing this for years, the lighting firms. So you should ask them for their advice. I've seen so many couples who have chosen a rogue DJ just because they saw him in a nightclub and he came in and he had no clue how to do a wedding. So these are just a few of the many questions that I think I would be asking if I was going to plan my own wedding. And by the way, all you ladies out there, I am so sorry. I'm taken. Take care and God bless.